Hello, this is Mr. Corkill with a little introduction to Chapter 2, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald from English 11, The American Dream with Mr. Corkill. All right, so let's just review real quick. Let me review. What is a symbol? This is a quick review. Remember, a symbol can be an object, a character, an action, or a situation that represents, that's a key word, represents a larger, deeper meaning than itself in literature. An author uses symbolism when they want to give more meaning and feeling to their story without directly pointing it out. It gives the author enough space to convey their purpose by using fewer words. Okay, now I want to tell you a little story about the history of Queens. All right. If we go back to 1920, and if you look at the top right of the picture, you see West Egg, where Gatsby's mansion is. And that mansion up there in the circle is actually the real mansion that F. Scott Fitzgerald saw and started fantasizing that Gatsby lived there and writing the book. All right. If you look all the way to the far left, you'll see New York City, Manhattan, the Plaza Hotel over there. And in the middle, there's an area called the Valley of Ashes. All right. This actually existed. Let me see how to explain this. In Manhattan on your left, and to Gatsby's crib on the right, that area of Queens in the middle, you can see where LaGuardia Airport is today to the top, right? That area in the middle wasn't houses, it was a dumping ground. It was a dumping ground for generations. You know how we recycle our trash today? We recycle and put it in different bins outside. Well, they did the same thing since the mid 1800s or early 1800s up until the 1920s. People used to burn wood and coal in their stoves and in their chimneys for heat and fire. And to power the electric plants that were coming up, they used coal to burn it, right? They had to dispose of all the ash from all the wood and the coal that was burnt in the city. So people would throw the ash from their stoves out into a different bin. And if you look at the man with the horse and the cart, what he's doing is he's dumping the ash, and he's a trash collector, but he's just collecting the ash from the buildings, right? So all that ash was sent over to outside of Queens. It's Queens today, but back then it was on the outskirts of Queens, to the place called the Corona Ash Dump of Queens. How ironic, Corona, right? The Corona Ash Dump of Queens. Okay, this place, like the picture you're looking at right now, is of a horse and a cart through the neighborhoods of Manhattan. The area that was called the Corona Ash Dump of Queens was full of poverty. It was full of dust, ash everywhere. Nobody wanted to live there, so the land was cheap, so the poor started moving in there. And it was full of disease. It was full of swampy, sick, disgusting stuff. There was, like you see in the photo, there's a dead horse there. All right. If there's a dead horse on the streets of Manhattan, if there were a dead horse on the streets of Manhattan, it would be picked up right away, but not in the Corona Ash Dumps of Queens. All right. Aerial view of the. Now Fitzgerald would drive through here every day because he and his wife Zelda were living out in Long Island. Um, and he would go into New York, into Manhattan, and you had to drive through the Valley of Ashes or through the ash dump of Queens. He called it the Valley of Ashes. All right. Today, it looks much different. Has been built over it. Right. If you look on the left photo, the slide on the left, you can see a hump of ash, right? A big old hill of ash. And if you see the top thing up there, that little thing in the very, very top of the ash hill, that's a man. So that's about 5 or 6 stories of ashes, right? Dumped and dumped over. So imagine when the wind kicked up, or if a train goes by, ash just flips up into the air. Okay, and on the right, this is what they did with the ash dump. They made a park. You know what today is Flushing Meadows Park. Flushing Meadows Park was a dump for ashes and swamp, and it had a disgusting river that ran through it. It was polluted. It stank there. And this man named Edward Moses decided, he was a city planner, he decided to build a park there so they could have the World's Fair. He took all that ash, those piles and piles of ash that had been collected over generations, and used them to help build the concrete to build the freeways and the highways around and through New York City. All right, next slide. Here's a picture of one of the hills in the Corona ash dumps of Queens. Um, they had these machines that would dump the hills. Here's some abandoned cars in the Corona ash dump. In the Corona ash dumps of Queens, here's some abandoned cars there. They would even find bodies in there. There were rats in there. Yes, they would find decaying bodies. Um, here's an example of how if a truck goes by, it just kicks up all the dust and the steam. Flushing Meadows Park, that is today what used to be the Corona ash dump. And today it's called Flushing Meadows Park. Okay, this slide is from the actual movie itself. It's an aerial view, the digital view that they were doing when they were making the movie. And if you look to the bottom right, you see where I have West Egg there, and you see Gadsby's mansion over there. And further down to the far right would be East Egg if it fit on this photo. Right? All the way to the left on the top is Manhattan. You can see the buildings. Okay, this is what it looked like in 1920. Right, you had the farms in the lower part of the picture of Long Island, and then along the way, before you got into Queens, but it is Queens today. Before you got into Queens back then, you had the Valley of Ashes, where the ashes were dumped. Right. This is the end of the Valley of Ashes and the Corona ash dumps of Queens slide. Next will be chapter 2 slides for your readings and your questions. Right. End of Valley of the Ashes and the Corona ash dumps of Queens slides. Next chapter 2 slides for readings.